I'm John Wilkie, and in the School of Chemistry, I'm the senior tutor. And the senior tutor's role is quite a wide-ranging one that kind of bridges the gap between academic performance and the welfare services. And so I take information from the personal tutors and pass that on to the welfare team and get information back from the welfare team that gets handed through to the personal tutors. And the idea is to make sure that we're looking after the whole student rather than just concentrating on academic grades. And in the end, hopefully, that everybody performs to their best. I kind of oversee the whole process of personal tutorials within the school. So I give the personal tutors guidance of the kind of things that they need to cover in the personal tutorial meetings. I sort out the schedule, so basically insist that everybody sees their tutees at the start of the year, at the end of semester one, just ahead of exams, and around the end of semester two as well, so that people can look back at how they've gone through the year, and hopefully that we pick up any problems that are taking place during that time. We also link in with that attendance monitoring, not in a kind of headmaster's approach where you're kind of disciplining people, but more because if students aren't attending, that's usually a good indicator for some other problem that might be getting in the way of their study. And so we use attendance data to pick up on someone who might be struggling and then try and find ways, dealing with the student themselves in conjunction with the students, ways and with the personal tutor, ways of supporting them through their education, and whether that's additional tutorials, whether that's extra time on assignments, or links to extra resources, or whatever that particular student needs. Every student gets treated differently because everybody's needs end up being a little bit different. We have effectively a three-tier system with the personal tutoring. So at the basic level, the ground level, if you like, are the personal tutors themselves. And each personal tutor will have between 10 and 20 personal tutees. So that should allow the tutor to get to know the tutee fairly well, to know their strengths, know their weaknesses and so on, but also to be able to keep in contact with the tutee fairly frequently. Above that, we have directors of year, one for each year, first year, second year, third year, and for the MSci students, year 4. And the director of year will take an overview of all the particular bits that need dealing with in that year. I also double as director of year 3. So I have an interest then in the BSc, the MSci transition, going from year 3 into year 4, what the students need to do to be able to make sure that's in place. Students coming into year 3, if somebody decides quite early on they've made the wrong choice between BSc and MSci, what do they need to do in terms of paperwork to switch from one to the other, to make sure that that's all dealt with. So I would have, as a year leader, an overview of all the stuff, all the administrative things that need to take place in that year. And I would immediately be directly coordinating the personal tutors who have tutees in that year. And then switching to my role as senior tutor, I kind of sit over the top of things, coordinate the due diligence group, which keeps an eye on students' attendance, and come up with the overall process. So if we find that some aspects of our process aren't working, it comes down to me as senior tutor to think about how we can change that to better support our students, and then to deal with the liaison with the welfare people as well, and making sure that information gets to where it needs to go, making sure that students are able to find the right form for everything they need to do, and that personal tutors know, we do a handbook at the start of the year so that the personal tutors know where they need to contact or where they need to refer students to in a whole variety of different things that may or might come up. Of course, will be different once again for each student. The most satisfying bit is kind of at the end of things. And as a senior tutor, I'm at this kind of peak of the pyramid, and so students, when they have problems, can escalate through members of staff from their personal tutor, director of the year, and then finally getting to the senior tutor. And I guess the most satisfying part of my role is when I've had conversations with somebody as senior tutor, making sure there's work plans in place and support mechanisms in place for the student. When that student finally gets to graduate, it's really quite satisfying that you know that students who perhaps without that level of support might not have got through to the end of the degree, gets to the end of the degree, graduates with whatever, whether it's a first, a 2-1, 2-2 or whatever, moves off into the workplace. And quite often then they come back at some point as well and say hello at a meeting or another. And that's really nice to know that this is sometimes someone who made a difference to their life, and that had we not had this process in place, they might not have got through their degree. They might have got through the degree without it, but it certainly helps in some cases. And I think that's really very satisfying when you know that you made a difference. The most important bit of the senior tutor role is the flexibility that comes with the role. While we do have set forms, set processes for a lot of things, you find very quickly into the role that by no means all students, in fact, probably say most of the students we end up talking to, don't fit with just one standard process. And one of the important things is the flexibility to find out what's the right approach for a particular student, what are the needs of that particular student, and how can we address those needs with sometimes the right forms, sometimes it's directing people to the right level of support, sometimes it's a combination of things. And that, I think, is probably the most important part of the role, is that ability to be flexible, to in some ways cut through the thicket of the administrative stuff and direct people, guide people in the right direction for them, rather than the checkbox list that might come up in some other areas. It's probably the student's first point of contact whenever there are any issues. Hopefully, the personal tutor knows the student quite well. We have this idea of splitting our students up, batches of between 10 and 20, a reasonably small number so the tutor can get to know something about everybody in their tutor group. And I must stress the personal tutor is distinct from an academic tutor. So the personal tutor is a kind of welfare contact in a way. Not the person who would have the answers to all the questions, but the idea of the personal tutor is that they ought to know where you should go, who a student should go and talk to with different questions. Because it could be, if you've got a problem, an issue that you need dealing with, it can be quite hard to navigate university websites and find information yourself when you don't really know who you need to talk to. So you know where your personal tutor is, you know who they are, they know a bit about you, and you go and see your personal tutor and then say, oh yes, you need to go and see welfare officer, or you need to go and talk to the international student team, or whoever it is for a particular issue. It's important, of course, to remember that the personal tutor is not trained in welfare. And so for welfare matters and for dealing with welfare, and particularly in a confidential nature, that's when you would go to the welfare or well-being officer, as we tend to call them. One thing we need to take into consideration for the academic year that we're just heading into is we're still going to be operating under a fair amount of restriction. And we don't know exactly what restriction yet, to deal with the virus. And one of the things that we might be losing is seeing people frequently at lectures and the like, which is often a good way to keep track of students. So one thing we're putting in place for the coming academic year is to make sure that we keep track of our students, keep in contact with the students, proactively contacting students to check they're okay. Obviously, we'd still like students, if they've got issues, got problems, to come to us with them so that we can make sure they get sent to the right levels of support. But we won't just be waiting for people to come to us. We'll be chasing after them, making sure that everybody is engaging, is fitting in with the course, because we know it's going to be that little bit more challenging when you can't get to see everybody in lectures every day. You're not in the department every day, as previously has been the case. Obviously, we hope that we'll be back to normal as quickly as we can, but we have to be realistic, and we know that for a while at least, there's going to be some differences. So we're going to make a lot of effort to try and support students.